as Walter said, it seemed like yesterday, but Deepwater Horizon occurred about 8 years ago. And when that happened, while the oil was spewing out, I brought a group of senators here, South Florida senators, people who'd never even probably been to Pensacola, to let them sort of see the looks on all of our faces and see what was going on here. Then I went back to Tallahassee and I sponsored a bill called the Oil Spill Recovery Act. And in the bill, I said, of course, we all recognize that BP is going to get fined because they violated the Clean Water Act. And ultimately, Congress created this Restore Fund, and you and I were chatting about the Restore Fund earlier when you talked about an environmental issue. Money from the fines that BP paid goes to this Restore Fund, and county commissions use it to deal with environmental issues and build boat docks and ball fields and other stuff that's interesting and good for our communities. But the bill I passed said, Florida, the state of Florida, is going to have an economic impact because when people lose their jobs, and we lost 50,000 jobs in the oil spill, 50,000. When people lose their jobs, they have less money, businesses have less money, and so there's less money being paid in taxes. And so therefore the state had an economic impact. The state lost money. And so Rick Harper from Pensacola was hired by the Attorney General to put together the economic case for what kind of damages the state had in lost taxes. And my bill said, if we could ever get any money out of BP for economic damages for the state, different from the claims that many businesses and individuals filed for their own damages, different from the Clean Water Act and the Restore funds that came because BP got fined, but the lost taxes that we had. If we ever got any money from that, then 3/4 of that money should go to the communities of Northwest Florida to diversify our economy. Why did the law say diversify our economy? Because we know that, if something stirs up out in the Gulf of Mexico, whether it is a man-made disaster like the oil spill, or whether it's the disaster that hit east of here. And I have property in Panama City, and I can tell you it is like East Berlin in 1946. So if there's a natural disaster or a man-made disaster in the Gulf, here's what we know. Our economy gets brought to a standstill. And you will remember that the perception of economic damage and environmental damage in this area had an extraordinary effect on your business until we were able to sort of tell people that we were still here. But we know that whenever there's a natural or man-made disaster, our tourism and hospitality industry and all the industries that relate to it immediately go to their knees. And the other thing we know is that if anybody in the Pentagon gets the sniffles, we can catch pneumonia as far as any effect on the military presence is concerned and the bases and the missions here. So we're a two-trick pony. The military and all the industries that relate to that, and hospitality and tourism and the industries that relate to that. And we know that we're vulnerable, and we know that even though we have a wonderful economy, we've seen how fragile it is. And if you want to know how fragile it is this minute, drive to Panama City today. And then if you've really, really got the guts, drive to Mexico Beach. But they're still digging for bodies. So the reason why the law that I passed said we would use any economic damages proceeds for diversification was to put a third leg under the stool of our economy so that we had something else to rely upon. Not that we would diminish our reliance on the hospitality industry and tourism or on the military and all the wonderful things it brings, but rather that we would build off of and leverage off of those things to make sure that there was something else in our economy that would also help hold up our standard of living and our jobs and our real estate prices and everything that we depend upon. Well, as it turned out, Pam Bondi, our Attorney General, sues BP for the state's economic damages, And we go to the federal court in New Orleans, and the federal court says, gee, this information that Rick Harper put together is pretty compelling. We'll award the state $2 billion. Nobody thought it was going to be that much. But what that meant was $1.5 billion would come to Northwest Florida for economic diversification. And the other $500 million was the VIG we would pay to the rest of the state to give us the money that, in effect, we lost. So then the same legislation created Triumph Gulf Coast, which is comprised of 6, and soon to be 7, board members. None of them are people in public office. A couple of former politicians, but the other people not in public office, who live under the Sunshine Law, live under the Conflict of Interest Law, the ethics laws, very, very strong ethics provisions. And our job is to look for opportunities to invest funds that will help diversify the economy and create jobs that pay more than the average wage and are sustainable jobs that are going to be around for a while. So here's what we're looking for. We're looking for projects that we can invest in, much like a venture capital kind of firm would invest, except we're not getting stock back, we're getting jobs for the economy. That's what we want. What we're looking for are projects where, first of all, the private sector has skin in the game. So, and secondly, where local government also has skin in the game. We got plenty of people who come to us and say, we have a hell of an idea here. This is the best idea in the world. And we want, pick a number, $3 million from Triumph. Now, it's not a good enough idea that we would put in our own money, of course. It's not a good enough idea that the county thinks it's a good idea, but it'd be a hell of an idea if you gave us your money. We got a lot of deals like that. We're looking for transactions where there's private sector money, where there's local government support, and where we are the junior partner, where we're the junior partner, not the senior partner, not the main funder, but the junior partner. Or as one of our board members likes to say, the cherry on top. And as I said, we're looking for projects that create jobs, and that create jobs that pay more and are sustainable. And we're also not looking to be a little county commission or a little legislature. In other words, we're not in the business of paving roads or building boat docks, things that the local government ought to do anyway. Instead, we want to be in the business of doing things that local government would want to do, might like to do, that create private sector economic activity. Now, that's kind of the business that we're in. And I will tell you that our board is comprised of people who, as I said, are solid business people. Some of them you will know. Dr. Pam Dana, who is associated with IHMC here. She's a business person. She actually not only is an economist and was Jeb Bush's top economic advisor when he was governor. She also owns some sport fishing boats, charter fishing boats, so she's in that business. Alan Benz, who's a major business person in the Panama City area and throughout the area. He's a member of the board of Gulf Power, former Speaker of the House. Ben Lee, who is a banker in Panama City. Jason Schoaf, who owns he's a family-owned utility business in the Port St. Joe area. Believe me, their world is destroyed right now. Stephen Riggs, who's a very successful CPA. Carr Riggs and Ingram, they're a very large regional CPA firm. And the Riggs we have is Stephen the Fourth, Stephen the Younger, not Stephen who's my age, not Stephen with hair like mine, but Stephen more the age of my son. And then we had Stan Connolly on the board, but because of his change, he's moving on professionally. He's resigned, and the governor has an appointment to appoint somebody in Stan's place, and then myself. And our economic advisor, to tell us whether or not these projects create a good return on investment, is Rick Harper, the guy who put together the original evidence for the economic damages Scott Remington with Clark Partington here is our lawyer. So far we've had about 100 applications, and some of them are good, some of them we've funded, some of them are kind of funny. There are people who just say, you know, my brother-in-law really, well, he doesn't need a job, he needs a position. Well, he doesn't really need a position. What would really help is if you could just give him a grant, get him out of my damn garage. We got some of those. Our approval process is very public. You submit an application, go to myfloridatriumph.com, read all about what the criteria are, pretty simple. Put in an application. It doesn't have to be leather bound, don't have to hire a consultant. It's something that you know, ordinary folks could put together probably over a long weekend. And we take it before our board, and our board says, yeah, that looks pretty good to us, or no, we're really sorry, that's not kind of our thing. In fact, the young lady and I were talking here earlier this morning, and she was worried about a seawall in her neighborhood, and I think it's a legitimate thing to worry about, certainly would be in my neighborhood in Niceville. But we don't build seawalls, we're not into the environmental projects. That's the county with all that Restore Act money. It's actually $6 billion for the Restore Act. We're dealing with economic diversification and economic development. So we're not building seawalls, we're trying to create long-term jobs. So our board would give conceptual approval. If a project gets conceptual approval, we go to a term sheet, and there we sort of lay out, okay, what kind of jobs are you going to create? And are you going to be responsible? We're not into faith-based economic development. Faith-based economic development is you give me money and you have faith that it's all going to work out. And if it doesn't, you know, stuff happens.
Free money.
Free money. Instead, we have something in our statutes that I wrote called clawbacks. And that is you have to guarantee you're going to create X many jobs on this schedule, paying that amount of money. And if you hit the first milestone and you haven't created the jobs, we'd like our money back, please. And so we have the strongest clawbacks that you'll see in all of the projects that we've approved. So we go to a term sheet, we put all that stuff together, and then we take that back to our board. It's all in public, debate it, discuss it, vote it up or down, and then we go to a contract that says, here's exactly when we're going to give you what money, here's exactly what you're going to do, here are the guarantees that you're going to give us, here's the deep pocket that is on the other side of the deal, so that if we have to claw back the money, we can claw back from a place where the money really is, not, I'm really sorry I spent all the money. And that's kind of the process. Now, so far we've approved projects that are slightly less than $100 million. The first project we approved was an expansion of the Port of Panama City. That port is actually a working, successful, profitable port where ships really come in and really go out and things really happen. Railroads come in and out and people do stuff. And there's commerce in the industry. It's not exactly like the Port of Pensacola. It is a much more active port. And they needed an expansion. They already had people lined up to rent the warehouses. They had the shipping lined up. They were prepared to guarantee the jobs, and they had a deep pocket and were ready to sign up. So they got the first 10 million. Then we put together probably 5 projects that are workforce training projects. Because one of the things we've learned is you can diversify the economy, but if you diversify the economy and you don't have a trained workforce, it doesn't work. We're working right now with a company that's an aerospace company, and the company says, you know, hey, we're prepared to expand our business. We're prepared to guarantee the jobs. We're prepared to sign up for all of the clawbacks. But our problem is going to be not having the jobs and not having the market for what we are producing. Our problem is going to be finding people in Northwest Florida who are qualified to come to work here and who want to work. And so part of what we're doing is also working with educational institutions to create workforce development projects, career and professional academies to train students to be qualified for real jobs in the real economy. And we've established about 5 of those grants now, and they'll roll out over the next 2 or 3 years. The other thing that we've done is to help fund an industrial park in Okaloosa County on Highway 90. And there it's not a field of dreams. Rather, we've got companies that are already signed up to come, and they're guaranteeing the jobs, but they're saying, you know, when we come, we'd like the toilet to flush. We would like to be able to have water and electricity. And we don't want to come and then have you tell us that in 18 months we're going to have infrastructure. So we want it all to come together at the same time. And Okaloosa County is guaranteeing that if that doesn't happen, they're going to write us a check back. So we've funded a project in that area. And then just recently, we have given term sheet approval, and I think next month we will give final contract approval to a major expansion at Whiting Field. Now, one of the things that I'm happy that Matt Gaetz is my congressman and my son, is Matt tells me occasionally things that I don't know. What I didn't know is that there are more takeoffs and landings at Whiting Field than at any other military airport in America. I didn't know that. Well, one of the issues at Whiting is that they're unable to do maintenance and repair and overhaul of their aircraft at Whiting. So they have to send the aircraft somewhere else. Well, the somewhere else is now saying, hey, close Whiting, move to where we can do the maintenance, repair, and overhaul, and you're going to save money. And so we are in a competitive environment to not only hold on to Whiting, but try to expand it. So Matt's working that side of it in Washington, but we've got to make sure that we got MRO facilities at Whiting. So we're putting in 48% of the money. Triumph is putting in 48% of the money. The county, Santa Rosa County, is putting in 52% of the money to do a major expansion of the airport facilities at Whiting to do maintenance, repair, and overhaul of aircraft there, of helicopters and other aircraft there. And they have companies on the hook, ready to go. And so we're a partner in that business. The biggest project that we're looking at is one you probably read about in the paper, and that's a major MRO campus at Pensacola Airport. It's a fascinating project because, again, there's a private sector partner who's truly viable. It's called VT May. It's really an arm, I would call it, or a division or a relationship with Singapore Air. They are the largest and most successful MRO supplier and vendor in the United States. They have the contracts for UPS, Federal Express, Delta, and other major airlines. And right now, their major MRO operations are in Alabama and in Virginia. And what they want to do is combine them and move them to Pensacola, to Florida. And so the city and the county have been doing a good job. I know that the city and the county don't always get along. I know that, like in any local governments, there's always friction. But the fact is that the city and the county have worked very hard together to put a package together to bring these people here. They already have hangar number 1 is already built, and they've produced the jobs they say they would produce, 200 jobs associated with that hangar already. And now we're talking about producing a whole lot more than 200 jobs. The project that we're looking at is to build hangars 2, 3, and 4, and a major maintenance facility and a headquarters building. 3,151 jobs, 3,151 new jobs. Average salary, well over $45,000, not including benefits, not including retirement. And that's well over the average wage here in Pensacola. We are looking at putting in about 28% of the money that is going to be needed to build this MRO campus. It's a $210 million project, and we have approved a term sheet, and we're in the process of negotiating a contract to put in $56 billion. And believe me, it is a tough contract. It's a contract that puts Singapore Air, VT May on the hook to provide the jobs, and they have to provide them, at certain times. By a certain time, they have to provide so many jobs, and then another milestone, they have to provide so many more jobs. The payroll has to be audited. If the jobs aren't there, they got to pay money back. They're a serious player. They got a deep pocket. And so we have a 3-part contract with the city and the airport authority on one hand, VT May, Singapore Air, and Triumph. And we're trying to put that together right now. It's interesting to do that kind of negotiation across the Pacific Ocean. But so far, we seem to be making some progress. It's not a done deal yet. But here's kind of an interesting thing maybe for your industry. 3,151 new jobs. Now, they haven't done any kind of scientific thing, but VT May said to their current employees in Virginia and in Mobile, they've announced we are negotiating to come to Pensacola. 2/3 of the people say, we want to come with you. We want to come to Pensacola. Well, if that happens, you're going to have to sell 2,000 houses just to their employees. When you bring in that many more people who have good jobs, you're going to have obviously a market that you understand better than I do, not only a commercial real estate market, but a residential real estate market as well. According to the analysis that Dr. Harper has done, and because he's done it, I believe it, each one of the residents who are going to be brought in by this project, each man, woman, and child, will spend about $14,300 annually in the local economy. So, like we were talking about earlier, Walter, when you have a new realtor comes in, they have, business cards printed, they get a nice name tag like Walter's got, they go get a new suit, maybe they get a new car, clean their car. There's instantly some peripheral economic activity. There's some multiplier in the economy. When you bring in people who are going to be working in the aerospace industry in highly technical and professional jobs, you got people who are going to spend money in the economy, and that's good for Pensacola. We're negotiating now the performance metrics that are going to be abided by, and there's an education and training component. And if we're going to make this successful, we're also going to be looking for an education partner, either a college or a university or a school system somewhere in the area, or somebody else who can work with VT May and with us to put together an academy to train people who may be coming out of the military or people who are in high school now. Train them to get industry certifications to be able to move into these jobs. So my hope is that a lot of people from the Pensacola area and from Escambia and Santa Rosa counties will compete for these jobs. And these jobs are going to be here for years because we're requiring that they be sustained jobs or they have to pay the money back. So over time, our educational system has to be plugged into the realities of the economy. And this is a reality that we think is going to be a very positive reality for Northwest Florida in general, and certainly for Pensacola and Escambia and Santa Rosa County. We have $1.5 billion over the course of time that we'll be investing. We already have the first $300 million. But then under the federal court order, BP has to pay Triumph Gulf Coast $80 million a year for every year between now and 2033. So it is a long-term process. There's no race to the courthouse. It's not like, well, if I don't get my application in by Thursday, the money is all going to be gone. And the very best ideas, we've got over 100 applications now, some of them very good. But the best ideas probably haven't been even proposed to us yet. And we're going to be around, not us as board members, because we can only serve one term. That's why I put it in the law. I didn't want to have a group of people who suddenly, develop their own little infrastructure and their own little PAL system. So we serve one term, we're out. But we're looking for the best ideas, and you probably know, and your clients know, your customers know, the people you deal with maybe have ideas that could really benefit the economy of our community but might fit within the criteria of Triumph Gulf Coast. Our goal is to leverage the $1.5 billion into not just $3 billion, but maybe $4 billion. If we're the junior partner, if by bringing our money to the table, we can put a deal together and we provide 40% of the money or 30% of the money or 28% of the money, we're able to induce other money that comes to the party from the United States Economic Development Agency, from the Florida Department of Transportation, other money that might otherwise not come to our area will be induced here to be part of deals that we can put together. So we want to leverage our money, our $1.5 billion, into $3 billion or $4 billion over the course of time. That is the $1.5 billion plus anything we can leverage, is the largest economic development fund in Florida history by multiples. So for a long time here in Northwest Florida, we've said, you know, they just don't take care of us. They don't watch over us in Tallahassee or Washington. We're a backwater, you know, we got the wrong time compared to them when we look at our watches. They just don't like us. Well, right now we have some tremendous advantages if we're able to put together the ideas, the concepts, the projects that can transform our economy. And if we can do that in aerospace, in, you know, every other kind of industry that you can imagine that would be a third leg under our stool, then we will have better communities and we'll have better jobs. Ultimately, we'll have better schools and we'll have a better Northwest Florida. Thank you very much.